In 2023, an elite team of French commandos entered Burkina Faso under cover of darkness. By morning, they had completely vanished, leaving behind a silent alarm of uncertainty across the nation. The incident sparked immediate tension. Military vehicles patrolled Ouagadougou's streets while rumors spread through local markets and government corridors alike. What mission brought these special forces to Burkinabe soil? What intelligence prompted this secretive operation? And how would President Ibrahim Traoré address this apparent violation of sovereignty? The answers weave together diplomatic tensions, resource politics, and shifting alliances that continue reshaping West African dynamics today, a complex geopolitical chessboard where every move carries consequences. When foreign soldiers enter your nation without permission, it signals a profound violation. For Burkina Faso, a country working to find its footing after decades of outside influence, the unauthorized presence of French commandos meant something had gone terribly wrong. The incident didn't happen in isolation. It was the culmination of years of tension between the former colony and its one-time ruler. Burkina Faso's path to true independence has been complicated and painful. After gaining formal independence from France in 1960, the nation remained tethered to French interests through economic systems, military agreements, and political influence. This arrangement embodied neo-colonialism, independence on paper, dependence in reality. France maintained military bases positioned as protection against terrorism and regional instability, while controlling significant economic interests. By 2022, the landscape had transformed like an old battlefield facing a new dawn. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, just 34 years old when he seized power in a military coup, represented a generation unwilling to accept the status quo. Young Burkinabe, confronting rampant insecurity despite years of French military presence, increasingly questioned foreign forces' effectiveness. In one notable incident months before the coup, protesters had surrounded a French military convoy, delaying it for days and signaling growing public resentment. Operation Barkhane, France's anti-terrorist initiative, had deployed thousands of troops across the Sahel region. What France presented as security assistance, many Burkinabe viewed as unwanted occupation, especially as terrorist attacks continued unabated. In Ouagadougou's crowded marketplaces, vendors openly sold anti-French merchandise while discussing how foreign forces seemed to attract rather than deter violence. Tensions escalated rapidly after Traoré took power. In December 2022, Burkina Faso demanded the replacement of France's ambassador. By January, the government ordered all French forces to leave within 30 days. Videos circulated showing French troops departing bases, leaving behind equipment and uncertainty about the security landscape. Traoré's public statements crystallized national sentiment. The fight we are waging is a fight for Africa's dignity, for Africa's sovereignty, he told supporters at a rally where thousands gathered waving Burkinabe flags in Ouagadougou's Revolution Square. His message resonated with citizens disillusioned by partnerships that seemed to deliver mostly poverty and insecurity. The capital became a stage for regular demonstrations. Young protesters carried signs reading, "France get out," while waving Russian flags alongside Burkinabe ones, explicitly rejecting French influence. During one particularly large gathering, protesters symbolically cleansed streets where French officials had recently traveled, pouring water and sweeping to remove colonial footprints. The night before the French commandos were detected was outwardly ordinary in Ouagadougou. Street vendors sold grilled meat, families retreated to their homes, and military patrols moved through streets as part of Traoré's increased security measures. Government buildings stood illuminated against the night sky, symbols of a nation attempting self-determination. When the commandos crossed into Burkinabe territory, they challenged the very essence of sovereignty. Their presence represented everything Traoré had warned about, foreign powers acting as though they still controlled African territory. For a government that based its legitimacy on breaking free from colonial influence, this represented an existential challenge. But what exactly happened during those dark hours as the commandos moved through Burkinabe territory? How did they enter undetected, and what mission brought them into a country that had explicitly asked French forces to leave? Special Forces units don't simply walk across international borders. They employ sophisticated techniques developed through years of training and experience. The French commandos who entered Burkina Faso used methods that reveal the dangerous reality of covert military operations in sovereign nations. The night of the incursion brought perfect conditions for such an operation. A new moon cast minimal light over the rugged border areas, while light cloud cover and seasonal Harmattan winds created a thin haze that reduced thermal imaging effectiveness. Burkina Faso's military, stretched thin by ongoing operations against terrorist groups, maintained typical patrol patterns at major crossing points, while vast stretches of border remained with minimal surveillance, creating natural corridors for the commandos to move through like shadows slipping between cracks in a fortress. The first reports of unusual movement came shortly after midnight. A border patrol near the Mali frontier noticed unfamiliar vehicle tracks leading into Burkinabe territory. Following protocol, they radioed their findings to regional command. Within the hour, residents of a small village reported seeing foreign-looking men with specialized equipment moving quickly through the area, triggering low-level alerts that remained fragmented as information passed through military hierarchies. Village witnesses described the intruders with remarkable consistency. 8 to 12 men moving in coordinated fashion, equipped with night vision gear, specialized communications equipment, and compact weapons systems consistent with HK-416 rifles used by French Special Forces. They wore no identifiable insignia, but their tactical movement patterns matched known French commando protocols. The soldiers communicated using hand signals rather than verbal commands, demonstrating training in noise discipline and covert movement. The location carried particular significance. Approximately 30 kilometers from a former French military intelligence outpost recently transferred to Burkinabe control. The region sits at a strategic crossroads where terrorist groups affiliated with both Al-Qaeda and Islamic State have established movement corridors. French intelligence had previously identified the zone as critical due to suspected weapons trafficking routes. Communication breakdowns hampered the Burkinabe military response. Regional command attempted to coordinate with local units, but contradictory reports created confusion about the commandos' location and movement direction. Radio communications suffered periodic disruptions that some officers described as possible electronic interference, while others attributed to standard equipment failures common in remote areas. The situation escalated when a junior officer bypassed normal channels and contacted a senior military advisor with direct access to President Traoré. By 3:30 a.m., the president had been awakened and briefed. Traoré immediately ordered a full security response, mobilizing special units and placing border forces on high alert. He reportedly remained in the military command center throughout the night, personally directing the search operation. By dawn, helicopter units conducted aerial reconnaissance while ground forces established checkpoints. Military intelligence activated informant networks in border communities. Despite these efforts, the commandos had vanished into the landscape, leaving only occasional footprints and disturbed vegetation. The trail went cold several kilometers from the initial sighting area. Aerial surveillance detected no unauthorized aircraft or vehicles for extraction. The mysterious disappearance presented Traoré with a crisis beyond the immediate security breach. How could he explain to his people that foreign soldiers had entered their country, moved freely, and departed without consequence? The incident struck at the heart of his promise to restore Burkinabe sovereignty. More concerning was the unanswered question: what had the commandos been searching for, or what information had they gathered during their brief but provocative presence on Burkinabe soil? When elite soldiers vanish without a trace, they leave behind more than just unanswered questions. They create a security nightmare that undermines a nation's confidence in its own borders. The morning after the French commandos were spotted in Burkina Faso, President Traoré launched one of the most extensive search operations in the country's recent history. He mobilized the military, intelligence services, border patrol units, and civilian volunteers in remote areas. The search began with standard grid patterns around the last confirmed sightings. Teams combed through villages while drones with thermal imaging swept over dense vegetation where commandos might hide, like trying to catch wisps of smoke in the wind. Border checkpoints doubled their personnel, examining vehicles and checking identification against expanded watch lists. Traoré personally supervised from a command center in Ouagadougou, receiving hourly updates as the operation expanded. As days passed without results, competing theories emerged about the commandos' purpose and fate. Military analysts proposed several possibilities. Perhaps the team gathered intelligence about terrorist movements and newly acquired weapons, targeted a specific individual, a terrorist leader or someone connected to the Burkinabe government, or placed surveillance equipment to intercept military and government communications. The possibility of inside help grew more plausible as the search continued fruitlessly. Someone within Burkina Faso's security apparatus might have provided information about patrol schedules and surveillance gaps. Several military officers with previous connections to French training programs faced questioning. The commandos likely had pre-established escape routes, including safe houses operated by sympathetic locals or intelligence assets developed during years of French military presence. Networks representing the colonial relationships Traoré had vowed to dismantle. Tracking commandos trained specifically for evasion presented enormous challenges. French special forces use counter-surveillance techniques to defeat thermal imaging, avoid leaving evidence, and maintain radio silence. They carry equipment minimizing heat signatures and move in ways that leave minimal physical traces. Even their boot prints can be disguised. A village elder near the border described the tension to investigators. "We search the bush all day, but feel watched ourselves. These men are like spirits. Everyone fears them, but no one sees them." Unusual aircraft activity in neighboring countries raised additional questions. Witnesses in Mali described a helicopter flying without lights near the border region hours after the commandos were spotted, while Niger's air traffic control recorded an unidentified aircraft that briefly appeared on radar before vanishing. These reports suggested an aerial extraction, though without conclusive evidence. The psychological impact reached far beyond immediate security concerns. Within military and intelligence services, an atmosphere of suspicion took hold. Who could be trusted if foreign operatives moved freely across borders? A young soldier at a remote checkpoint confessed to firing at shadows 3 nights in a row. "The enemy we cannot see terrifies us more than the one we can," he explained. The commandos' disappearance created a persistent sense that invisible forces could move through Burkina Faso whenever they wished, regardless of declarations of sovereignty. This perceived vulnerability struck at the heart of Traoré's promise of independence. Control over territory forms the foundation of national sovereignty. Without it, other forms of independence become meaningless. As the physical search gradually wound down without resolution, attention shifted to another battlefield altogether. The diplomatic storm brewing between Burkina Faso and France would soon eclipse the physical search itself. When soldiers cross borders unauthorized, words transform into weapons more powerful than bullets. Following the discovery of French commandos on Burkinabe soil, President Ibrahim Traoré addressed his nation through a televised speech that carefully balanced outrage with restraint. Standing before the national flag, Traoré characterized the incident as a clear violation of our sovereignty by forces that refuse to accept Africa's right to self-determination. His language resonated with the public, framing the event as part of a larger struggle for true independence. The president evoked historical sacrifice. "Our ancestors fought for this land. They bled for this soil. We will not allow foreign forces to treat our territory as their playground." He avoided naming France directly initially, a strategic choice that allowed him to gauge international reaction before escalating the diplomatic confrontation. This measured approach surprised observers who expected a more inflammatory response from the young military leader. Traoré's words echoed beyond Burkina Faso's borders, triggering an international diplomatic cascade. France's Ministry of Defense issued an ambiguous statement that France respects the sovereignty of all nations and conducts operations only within established international frameworks. When pressed further, a spokesperson called the reports unsubstantiated allegations, refusing to address whether French forces had entered Burkinabe territory. As days passed, French officials suggested the incident might have been a misidentification of regular border patrols or a manufactured situation designed to increase anti-French sentiment. The diplomatic tension quickly spread regionally. Mali and Niger expressed solidarity with Burkina Faso, with Mali condemning continued Western military presence that undermines African sovereignty. Other nations took more cautious positions. Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire called for dialogue and clarification rather than outright condemnation. Media coverage revealed global divisions in understanding. French outlets questioned Burkina Faso's claims, highlighting unproven allegations, while African news organizations framed the event as ongoing French military interference in former colonies. Western media outside France generally reported the story as a diplomatic dispute, with competing narratives. Burkina Faso responded with concrete diplomatic measures. The government summoned French diplomatic personnel for formal questioning, filed a complaint with the UN Security Council, and suspended military cooperation with several European nations pending clarification of their positions regarding respect for Burkina Faso's territorial integrity. The incident ignited widespread anti-colonial sentiment. Protests erupted outside French embassies across West Africa. In Bamako, Niamey, and Dakar, thousands carried signs reading "France out of Africa" and "African solutions for African problems." Online, hashtags like French Commandos out and African sovereignty created a virtual solidarity movement transcending national boundaries. Domestically, Traoré leveraged the incident to strengthen his position. The government introduced new security measures, including increased border surveillance and enhanced counterintelligence operations. The president established a sovereignty council comprising military leaders, tribal elders, and civil society representatives tasked with safeguarding national independence. Public perception of Traoré transformed. Previously viewed as a military officer who seized power unconventionally, he became increasingly seen as a defender of national dignity standing against neo-colonial forces. His approval ratings rose significantly, particularly among young Burkinabe who saw a leader willing to challenge former colonial powers directly. But beyond the heated rhetoric and diplomatic maneuvering, what lasting impact did this mysterious incident have on Burkina Faso's relationship with France and its place in the world? The mystery of the French Commandos hangs over Burkina Faso months after their appearance and disappearance. No official explanation has satisfied the questions that linger in the minds of citizens and observers alike. Who sent them, for what purpose, and how did they vanish without a trace? For Ibrahim Traoré, this incident became a defining moment. His response transformed him from a military leader into a beacon of resistance against perceived colonial interference. He emerged as the embodiment of national dignity in the shadows of uncertainty. The Burkinabe people now watch their borders with renewed vigilance, their path to independence continuing through contested terrain where allegiances remain as unclear as the footprints in desert sand.